Have you ever done something you were really proud of? Maybe you finished a big project, got a promotion, hit a milestone you'd been chasing for months. And then, after the celebration faded, after the notifications stopped coming, you just felt empty? Like the high wore off almost immediately, and you were left standing there wondering, wait, I thought this would make me feel different. I thought this would make me feel like I'm enough. If you've ever felt that way, I want you to know something before we go any further. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not ungrateful. You are not incapable of happiness. What's actually happening is something much simpler, much more human, and honestly, something most people never get told. The feeling of worth, the deep, quiet sense that you matter, that you're doing okay, that your life has value. It doesn't come from the big moments. It comes from the small ones, the repeated ones, the ones nobody applauds, the ones you do on a Tuesday morning when nobody is watching and nobody is keeping score. Today, we're going to talk about why that is, what's happening inside your brain when you show up consistently, and why the most powerful thing you can do for your self-esteem has nothing to do with achieving more. It has everything to do with doing less, but doing it again and again and again. Let me take you somewhere familiar. Imagine it's Monday morning. Your alarm goes off. You have a plan. Maybe you told yourself last night, tomorrow I'll wake up early, I'll go for a walk, I'll eat a real breakfast, I'll sit down and work on that thing I keep putting off. You meant it. You really did. But then the alarm sounds, and your hand reaches for your phone before your eyes are even fully open. You scroll. 10 minutes become 30. Now you're already behind. You feel that little pang of guilt, that quiet voice saying, there you go again. And the whole plan unravels before your day has even started. Now, here's the thing most people don't realize. That moment, right there, is not just about a missed alarm. It's about something much deeper. Every time you make a promise to yourself and you don't follow through, your brain takes note. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like a slow leak in a tire. Over days and weeks and months, those small breaks in self-trust add up. And one day you look in the mirror and you think, why don't I believe in myself? Why do I feel like I can't count on me? The answer is not that you're weak. The answer is that you've been breaking small agreements with yourself so often that your brain has stopped taking your words seriously. I know that might sound harsh. I don't mean it that way. I say it with so much warmth because I've been exactly where you are. I have made beautiful plans at midnight and abandoned them by noon. I've told myself starting Monday more times than I can count. And for years, I thought the problem was motivation. I thought if I just found the right podcast, the right book, the right moment of inspiration, I would finally change. But that's not what happened. What actually changed things for me was something far less exciting, far less dramatic, and far more powerful. I started doing tiny things every single day. Not because I felt like it, not because I was inspired, but because I decided that keeping a small promise to myself mattered more than any grand gesture ever could. Let me explain what happens in your brain when you do this. There's a chemical in your brain called serotonin. You might have heard of it. It's often called the feel-good chemical. But that label doesn't really capture what it does. Serotonin is not about excitement or thrill. It's about calm. It's about stability. It's that quiet, grounded feeling when you lie down at night and think, today was okay. I did okay. I'm okay. Serotonin is the chemical of enough. And here's what researchers have found again and again. Serotonin doesn't spike from one big achievement. It rises slowly, steadily when you engage in repeated, consistent behavior. When you wake up at the same time. When you move your body regularly. When you finish small tasks you said you would finish. When you show up for yourself day after day, even when nobody notices, even when nobody claps. Think about it like this. If you water a plant once a month and then dump a whole bucket on it, it's not going to thrive. But if you give it a small amount of water every morning, it grows. Slowly, quietly, but reliably. Your sense of self-worth works the same way. It doesn't want the bucket. It wants the daily cup. Now let's talk about dopamine for a moment, because dopamine is part of this story too. Dopamine is your brain's reward chemical. It's what lights up when you get a notification, when you eat something sweet, when you buy something new, when someone likes your post. Dopamine is fast, intense, and short lived. It gives you a spike and then it drops. And here's the problem: when you get used to that spike, when your brain expects instant reward, then anything slow, anything quiet, anything that doesn't deliver a hit right away starts to feel boring, unworthy, not worth doing. That's why sitting down to read a book feels harder than scrolling your phone. That's why going for a walk feels less appealing than watching another video. That's why doing 20 minutes of focused work feels like pulling teeth, while 2 hours of random browsing feels like nothing. Your dopamine system has been trained to chase the fast reward. And in the process, it's taught you to undervalue the slow, steady actions that actually build your sense of self. So what do you do about it? You don't have to quit your phone. You don't have to go live in the mountains. You don't have to punish yourself for enjoying fast rewards. What you do is you start to gently, patiently introduce more of the slow ones. You start to show yourself through action that you can be trusted. And the way you do that is ridiculously simple. You pick one small thing, just one. Maybe it's making your bed every morning. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water before you check your phone. Maybe it's sitting quietly for 3 minutes with your coffee before the noise of the day begins. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you do it today, and then tomorrow, and then the day after that. Not perfectly, not without missing a day here or there, but consistently enough that your brain starts to notice a pattern. It starts to say, oh, this person shows up, this person follows through. Maybe I can trust this person. And that trust, that internal trust between you and yourself, that is where self-worth lives. Not in the achievements, not in the approval of others, not in the highlights of your life. In the quiet, repeated evidence that you are someone who keeps their word. I want to pause here for a moment because I think some of you might be thinking, but I've tried this before. I've started routines. I've made plans, and I always fall off. And I hear you. I really do. But I want to gently ask you something. When you started, were you aiming for something enormous? Were you trying to wake up at 5 and run 5 kilometers and meditate for 20 minutes and journal 3 pages and eat perfectly, all starting on day 1? Because if you were, that's not consistency. That's a performance. And when you inevitably couldn't keep it up because nobody could keep that up from a cold start, you didn't just miss a habit. You confirmed a story. The story that says, I can't stick with things. I'm not disciplined. I'm not enough. And that story hurts. It hurts so much because it feels true. But it's not true. It's just what happens when you try to leap before you've learned to walk. If this video is reaching you right now, if something in these words is landing somewhere real inside your chest, I want to ask you for one small thing. Hit that like button, not for me, but for you. Let it be your first small action of consistency today. Let it be a tiny signal to yourself that you're paying attention, that you're ready to show up differently. And if you think someone in your life needs to hear this, send it to them. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is share a quiet moment of understanding with someone who's struggling in silence. Now here's where it gets really interesting. There's another chemical in your brain called cortisol. You've probably heard of cortisol in the context of stress, and that's accurate. Cortisol rises when you feel threatened, overwhelmed, pressured, anxious. But here's what most people don't connect. Cortisol also rises when you live in a state of chronic self-disappointment, when you constantly break promises to yourself, when you live in a cycle of starting and stopping, of hoping and failing, of planning and abandoning. Your body registers that as a kind of instability. And instability to your nervous system feels like danger. So your cortisol stays elevated, not because a lion is chasing you, but because deep down, you don't trust yourself to follow through on your own life. And that elevated cortisol makes everything harder. It makes you more reactive. It makes you snap at people you love. It makes you lie awake at night with a racing mind. It makes you crave even more quick dopamine hits because your brain is desperately looking for relief. And the cycle continues. But here's the beautiful part. Here's the part that gives me chills every time I think about it. The cycle works in reverse too. When you start showing up in small ways, when you start keeping tiny promises, your cortisol begins to drop. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily. Because your nervous system is starting to get the message. This person is reliable. This person is stable. I can relax a little. And as cortisol drops, serotonin rises. And as serotonin rises, you start to feel that quiet sense of okayness that you've been searching for in all the wrong places. You start to feel it not because anything huge changed in your life, but because something tiny changed in your day. And then it changed again the next day. And the next. There's a man I once read about. He was going through a difficult time. Depression, isolation, a sense that his life had no direction. And his therapist didn't give him a complex plan. She didn't prescribe a dramatic transformation. She said, "Every morning I want you to make your bed. That's it. Just make your bed." He thought it was silly. He almost didn't do it. But he did. The first morning he made his bed and felt nothing. The second morning, same thing. But by the end of the first week, something shifted. He made his bed, and then he thought, well, the bed looks nice. Maybe I'll put the dishes away too. And he did. And then he sat down and had breakfast instead of skipping it. And then he went for a walk. None of these things were part of the plan. They just happened. Because when you do one small thing that says, I care about my life, it becomes easier to do the next small thing. And the next. And slowly, without realizing it, you've built something. Not a routine, a relationship with yourself. I think we underestimate how lonely it is to live without trusting yourself. We talk a lot about loneliness in terms of other people, and that's real and important. But there's a different kind of loneliness that comes from feeling disconnected from yourself, from not knowing if you'll do what you say, from watching yourself repeat patterns you hate. That kind of loneliness doesn't go away with company. It goes away with consistency. Because every time you show up for yourself, you become a little less alone. Let me talk about something else for a moment. Let's talk about the feeling of value in the context of other people. Because I think many of us learned early on that our worth was tied to what we could do for others. Be a good student, be a good child, be helpful, be productive, be impressive. And so we learn to measure ourselves by output, by achievement, by approval. And that works for a while. It works until the achievements slow down. It works until you hit a period where you're not producing, not performing, not impressive by any external standard. And in that gap, you fall apart because you never built the internal foundation. You never learned to feel valuable just for being someone who shows up. And here's what I want to say about that. You don't have to earn your worth. You were born with it, but you do have to practice feeling it. And the practice is not affirmation in the mirror, though that helps some people. The practice is action. Repeated, quiet, unglamorous action. The kind that nobody sees. The kind that doesn't make a good Instagram story. The kind that is just you, being a person who does what they said they would do. That's it. That's the whole secret. And I know some of you are thinking, but what if I don't have big goals? What if I don't know what I want? What if I'm just trying to get through the day? And I want to tell you that's okay. You don't need a grand purpose to start. You need a small action. Maybe today, your small action is eating a real meal instead of skipping lunch. Maybe it's going to bed 30 minutes earlier instead of scrolling until your eyes burn. Maybe it's putting your phone in another room for 1 hour. Maybe it's folding the laundry that's been sitting in the basket for 4 days. These things sound trivial. They sound like nothing. But they are everything, because every single one of them is an act of self-respect. And self-respect, practiced daily, becomes self-worth. Let me share something with you that I think about often. There's a concept in psychology called self-efficacy. It's different from self-esteem. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself in general. Self-efficacy is how much you believe you can handle specific things. And self-efficacy doesn't come from thinking positive thoughts. It comes from evidence, from doing hard or boring or uncomfortable things and surviving them, from proving to yourself through experience that you can handle your own life. And that evidence is built one small action at a time, not one dramatic gesture, not one life-changing moment, one Tuesday, one Thursday morning, one quiet Saturday afternoon where you chose to do the thing instead of avoiding it. Oxytocin plays a role here too, and I don't want to skip it. Oxytocin is often called the bonding chemical. It rises when you hug someone, when you feel safe with another person, when you have a real conversation, not the surface kind, but the kind where you actually say what's on your heart. And here's the connection. When you start trusting yourself, when you start showing up for yourself, it becomes easier to show up for other people too. Not from obligation, not from guilt, but from genuine capacity. Because you can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't be truly present for someone else when you're at war with yourself. The people around you feel the difference when you're grounded. They feel the difference when you've been keeping your word. Not because you tell them, but because you carry yourself differently. You're calmer, you're steadier, you're less reactive. And that steadiness, that quiet reliability, it becomes a kind of love. Not the loud kind, the kind that lasts. I want to be honest with you about something. This path is not exciting. It's not going to go viral. Nobody's going to make a movie about the person who started making their bed and drinking water in the morning. But I promise you, from the deepest place in my heart, it works. Not because I read it in a book, though I've read many, but because I've lived it. I've been the person who couldn't stick with anything. I've been the person who started over every Monday. And I've been the person who slowly, painfully slowly, started doing one small thing a day and watched it change everything. Not my circumstances, my relationship with myself. And when that relationship changes, everything else shifts too. Your patience with others, your ability to handle stress, your tolerance for discomfort, your capacity to sit in silence without reaching for your phone. All of it, built from the same foundation, one repeated action at a time. So if you're sitting there right now and you feel like you've wasted time, like you've fallen behind, like everyone else has figured it out except you, I want you to hear this. You haven't wasted anything. Every failed attempt was data. Every abandoned routine taught you something. Every moment of self-disappointment was your brain asking you to try a different way. And the different way isn't bigger. It isn't louder. It isn't more dramatic. It's smaller, quieter, gentler. One thing, done today, and then done again tomorrow. That's how you build a self worth believing in. Before we get to the end, I want to sit with something for a moment. I want to talk about the space between starting and seeing results, because that space is where most people quit. It's the uncomfortable middle where you've been doing the thing for a week or two, and nothing seems different. You still feel the same. Your life still looks the same. And the voice in your head says, "See, this doesn't work. You're wasting your time." That voice is loud, and it's convincing. But it's wrong. Because change, real change, the kind that rewires your brain and shifts your identity, doesn't announce itself. It accumulates quietly, like snow falling in the night. You don't notice it while it's happening. But one morning you wake up, and the whole landscape is different. You can't point to the moment it changed. You just know it did. That's what serotonin does over time. It builds a floor under you, a quiet, stable platform that says, "You're okay, you're doing fine, keep going." And you don't need anyone else to validate that. You don't need a certificate or a promotion or a round of applause. You just need the evidence of your own days. The stack of mornings where you showed up, the pile of evenings where you followed through. That's your proof. That's your worth. And nobody can take it from you because nobody gave it to you. You built it yourself with your own two hands, one ordinary day at a time. I think that's the most beautiful thing about consistency. It belongs to you, completely. It doesn't depend on luck or talent or circumstances or other people's opinions. It depends on one decision made fresh every single day. I'm going to do the small thing, again. And here's what I want to leave you with. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. You don't have to change your whole life today. You don't have to become a different person by tomorrow. You just have to do one thing. One tiny, honest, unglamorous thing. And then you have to do it again. Not because it will solve everything, but because it will start to solve the one thing that matters most, the distance between who you are and who you know you can be. That distance is not closed by inspiration. It's closed by repetition. And repetition doesn't require strength. It requires kindness. The kindness to say to yourself, "I know this is small. I know this seems like nothing, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm worth the effort of showing up." That's where your value lives, not in the highlights, not in the trophies, not in the moments the world sees, in the quiet, repeated choice to be someone who keeps going, someone who tries again, someone who, even after falling off for the 100th time, starts again on a Tuesday morning like it's the most natural thing in the world. Because it is. It is the most natural thing in the world. And you are capable of it. You always have been. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to the end. If this video made you feel a little less alone, a little more understood, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one small thing you're going to start doing every day? I read every single comment and I want to hear from you. And if this is the first time you found this channel, welcome. Subscribe and come back. We'll keep having these quiet conversations together, one small step at a time.